So you're a PT or PTA grad who's feeling the spark of something more. Maybe you dream of building your own business, one that's constructed around your vision, one that empowers you to make a real difference on your terms. This feeling, it's the entrepreneurial itch, and you're not alone. Countless PTs and PTAs are taking the leap to entrepreneurship, crafting careers that are as unique as they are. Welcome to the Innovate and Rehabilitate, the Entrepreneurial PT podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of PTpreneurship with inspiring physical therapists and physical therapist assistants just like you who are crushing it on their terms. We'll uncover their secrets, their struggles, and the incredible impact they're making. From building your PT boss dreams to navigating the business side of things, we'll equip you with the knowledge and inspiration to turn your vision into reality. So, whether you're just curious about starting your own business or you're already out there making your dreams a reality, this podcast is for you. Get ready to unleash your inner entrepreneur. Let's do this.
My name is Scott Giles. I'm the founder of Score Builders and your host for today's podcast. I want to extend a special welcome to today's guest, Paul Marquis. Paul is a master clinician and the vice president of clinical operations at County Physical Therapy. He's the director of their clinic in Presque Isle and oversees 5 other clinics. Paul has nearly 3 decades of orthopedic and sports experience. In 2014, Paul founded Ortho Eval Pal, an educational offering designed to assist healthcare practitioners to improve their orthopedic clinical skills. The company's offerings consist of podcasts, videos, continuing education courses, and coaching. In addition, Paul is the owner of a medical education company and invented a commercially available calf stretching device called Easy Slant. Paul is a PT-centric family. His wife, Beth, was a classmate in the physical therapy program at the University of New England and currently works in home care. His daughter recently graduated from Husson University as a physical therapist as well. So this is a family thing for Paul, and they're thinking about it and talking about it at the dinner table as well. So, Paul, welcome to the show. I'm super happy to have you on.
Scott, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, it's so funny because we've known each other for, I don't know, probably close to 30 years, but very peripherally, because when I was the director of clinical education at the University of New England, County Physical Therapy, and yourself especially, were grateful enough to educate many of our students on their clinical experiences. And that's where I started to know, the kind of quality that you folks provided up there and the type of master clinician you are. But what was funny is when I left the University of New England, obviously I hadn't seen you. You're quite a ways from where I am in the last 15 years or so. And then we're at CSM this February. And I'm at the train station, literally headed home, like exhausted, probably looking at it as well. And I see this guy kind of across the way, and I'm kind of looking over, and I'm like, I know that guy, and I couldn't place it. And then I'm thinking, like, that looks like Paul Marquis, but he looks too young. And you were looking good and everything, and I'm like looking like terrible. And so, anyways, but I couldn't pull the trigger. I just wasn't confident enough it was you because that's how good you looked. And so anyway, so then we get on the train. I was kind of mad at myself. I was like, why didn't you just say something? Because I really think it was you. So anyway, so as you know, we were both happened to be working in different cars on our computer. I'm like, I'm going to find his email and send him a message. And so we did. And sure enough, it was you. You got immediately back to me. And then we started talking. And that's how I became aware of all the things you've been doing in Ortho Eval Pal. And I started becoming a faithful, listener and watcher of your videos. And I think they're tremendously well done and an amazing resource. And that's how I got the idea to say, hey, would you be interested in coming on the show? So a lot of respect for what you've done and the diversity of your activities. And I'm really looking forward to unpacking some of this in the next, 30 plus minutes or so.
Yeah, well, Scott, first of all, you must be getting older and your vision must be going, because if you thought I was looking okay, that's, there's something wrong with you. But yeah, no, and the same thing with me. I was like sitting at the train station and I was thinking to myself, I know this guy from somewhere, but I don't think I've ever met you face to face before.
Yeah,
so I'm like, who's this tall guy in front of us and whatnot? He looks super familiar, but I had graduated from UNE before you started at UNE. Right. So that just tells you how old I am. And it's funny how we were talking about test taking the other day and we were, filling in the dots when we took our board exams.
Yeah,
and
that's a sure
how long ago that's been, but how quickly it's gone by and how much we've learned in the last 30 years or so. But, I really thank you for, connecting with me that day. And I've learned a lot from you since then, and you've been a great resource for me. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that and taking that step. And it's definitely something I'm sure we're going to talk about today is, how do you get from point A to point B? And oftentimes it's just taking the step, and not holding back. And
exactly.
If somebody says no, they say no, that's fine. But moving forward and making, good relationships, I think is the key to moving forward.
No, exactly. And that was a good example, pulled on a past relationship. And, and Paul, you're a true entrepreneur. I loved it when I got a call from you the other day and you texted me, you're like, you got a minute? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, hey, I've got this idea. And I get fired up when that kind of stuff happens. It's really great. So anyways, we'll get into all of that. But so, all right, let's go back to the beginning, Paul. How did physical therapy even become on your radar? How did you decide to go to the University of New England and pursue the degree?
Yeah, well, to be totally honest with you, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was at a men's softball game. I was playing, actually, and I was on deck, and I was listening to my now boss, Mark Rossingall, talking to somebody. He had just started in physical therapy, and he was talking to a friend of mine about PT. And I had no idea what it was, but I was kind of eavesdropping a little bit because I was curious. And that night after the game was done, I went home and I asked my mom, I said, do you have any idea what physical therapy is? And she says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, as luck has it, my mom went to work the next day. She worked at a bank. Mark happened to come in. He had a couple of checks to cash. And my mom says, Paul mentioned your name last night. And she said that, he was interested in physical therapy. What's physical therapy all about? And he says, well, why don't you have him give me a call? He can come down and do some observation. Well, that night my mom came home. The next day I made the phone call. He had me come in a day after that. It was kind of like in the summer, something like that. And I walked into the clinic. There were several patients going. I remember he had this patient with a fractured patella he was working with. And he was really guiding her and helping her along, even though she was having a tough time. She was obviously in a lot of pain. Within 5 minutes, I knew that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a PT. So I started studying as a sophomore in high school. I started studying anatomy. And really, to be honest with you, my high school grades were not great. I wasn't, I was a very humble and quiet student. I wasn't super studious. I always worked hard as a high school kid, so always had jobs and played some sports. But the educational part of it was just not my strong suit. But I had this interest in PT, and I started studying anatomy. And from that point on, I never let off. And so I applied to UNE, and if you remember back then, there were like 1,600, spots or 60 spots for about 1,600 applicants.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy.
And I was having a hard time getting into the program. My high school grades just weren't great enough, but I did get in under the occupational therapy program, and I started the prereq classes, and I kept going to the advisor and saying, I really want to get into PT. I really want to get into PT. I was getting my grades up there. I was pushing it really hard, built some great relationships, and then other folks were kind of falling out of the program. I stepped in, and then from there just enjoyed my college career and became president of the class, actually, and the liaison between students and the teachers. And it just kind of went from there. I had some very excellent clinicals, and I think that really helps to jumpstart you. Having a great clinical with some great mentorship while you're at the clinical is key. And then I just went from there. I then started at Cary Medical Center. I had this kind of a FELP loan type repayment program. I started into that. I was there for about 6 months. I was looking for something a little more aggressive, and I happened to have evaluated a patient one day, kind of pulled out an unusual diagnosis out of that patient, sent a letter to a local orthopedic surgeon, said, I'm really concerned about this. The surgeon brought the patient in, did surgery, and I had nailed the diagnosis. So he took my letter and brought it to Mark Rossingall at County Physical Therapy and said, Mark, you need to read this, and you need to talk to this guy. Maybe somebody you want to employ. And so Mark gave me a call and said, hey, listen, are you interested in coming to work for us? And at that point, I really wanted something more aggressive. I wanted something more in the sports and orthopedic field. And so Mark took me under his wing, pushed me hard. We worked we do work in a very high volume clinic. We see patients from all over the place. We've had people drive from Prince Edward Island, which is a 7-hour drive, to come see us. And, we have people, it's not uncommon in northern Maine because we're so spread out that people drive an hour and a half to come to therapy 2 or 3 times a week. And so high volume of patients. So we got to learn a lot. I was very well guided and mentored by Mark, who had a lot of experience and was very aggressive. And here we are.
So you've been with County PT your entire physical therapy, but besides your brief stint at Cary Medical Center, the acute care hospital, you've been with County your entire career.
Yes, yeah. And after about, I want to say maybe 10 years, I became vice president of clinical operations, where I kind of oversaw the growing clinics. We started in a very small clinic, 3 tables, probably, 700 square feet. And just the two of us, super high volume. And then we moved over to Ashland, Maine, which is super rural. We did a little contract out there. Ended up in Presque Isle, where I now work, and since then we've been in 4 different clinics because we've always outgrown every clinic. So we're in a 15,000 square foot facility now, and we have 5 therapists that work along with me. And we have 6 clinics throughout the state of Maine that I help to oversee and kind of help triage patients with.
No, that's wonderful. So Paul, I guess one of the things I wondered is how, you mentioned mentorship and things like that, but I know that you have a real thirst for knowledge, and that you don't become a master clinician and have a passion for the stuff like you do by accident. So how did you evolve as a clinician? Because look, your whole business now, which is a side hustle, Ortho Eval Pal, but has, it's been very successful. We'll get into that in a little bit. But how do you, that's based on you having the knowledge to share with people and to educate people, et cetera. But how do you become a clinician that's qualified to do the kind of things that you're so obviously well prepared for? How does that happen? A lot of new grads will be listening to this, and I think it'd be helpful for you to give them an idea of your journey.
Well, I'm kind of unusual in the sense that, when I see something and I can't get a good diagnosis on it, or I feel like I'm kind of stuck, number one, I'll go out and I'll look for the information. I'll do my research. I'll spend my evenings, sometimes weekends, looking up information so that I can optimize what I see. As I tell people oftentimes, especially those that I coach, it may look like a duck, quack like a duck, and walk like a duck, but it smells like a dog. Then therefore, you shouldn't treat this as a duck. And so I'll do a lot of research on my own. The other thing that I've done over the years is built up a really strong relationship with many different clinicians in different fields. So physiatry, orthopedics, neurology, neurosurgeons. I have a cell phone full of contacts. And if I get stuck, all I have to do is text them, email them, call them. And I think that's been very, very helpful. So I say, like I did with you the other day, I have this scenario. Can I run it by you? I'll call a physician and I'll say, I have this really unusual presentation. And it usually perks, the idea in the provider to say, hey, I want to see this patient also. They've learned that when I send them patients, it's very interesting. We have a great conversation back and forth. But I think that developing great relationships with people who know more than you do in certain areas is extremely beneficial. And so that has helped to guide me. You need to remember too that I don't go to work at 7 a.m. and leave and look at my watch and say, okay, it's 4:00. I need to leave now. You have to work it longer than that, especially in physical therapy. And so I put a lot of my lunch times are into research or doing a podcast. Whenever I do a podcast, I make sure that I do a lot of fact checking just to make sure that, I've had these ideas. I've learned all this stuff for 30 years, 32 years plus. But I just want to make sure that it's factual and that everybody is getting great information. So I kind of fact check myself before I get going. And that extra research when I'm preparing to do a video or I'm preparing to do a podcast, I've learned so much by doing that. It's been incredible. But it has taken a tremendous amount of work and grit. And, you can't let other people bring you down. It's just amazing at how many trolls there are out there on YouTube and on social media. And there, the imposter syndrome, we talked about this a little bit when I interviewed you on my show, and how that can drive you in 2 different directions. It can drive you down, and you may just hang it up and say, I can't do this, or you can move forward and use that fuel, for your fire in however you want to use it.
No, it's great. And the quality of your stuff is super high level. And I love also when you're able to incorporate actual patients into the podcast and the videos. And it's just so helpful. And I would encourage anyone with looking to improve their orthopedic skills to give Paul's stuff a listen. And Paul, I mean, how many podcasts alone have you done at this point in time? What are we up to? Like 350?
I think the one that I did with you just launched this morning on September 17th, and that was episode 354.
That's amazing. Yeah, credit to you. So Paul, how did you get to the point where obviously you knew you had good clinical skills. You knew people seek you out. You know all that. But how did it get to the point where it's like, look, I want to give back. I want to get this information out there. How did you even formulate an idea to move forward with the Ortho Eval Pal?
Yeah. So I'll go back to like about 2010. I was at a course. I used to go to a lot of continuing education courses, and have been some great ones. And the one that I was at had a great presenter. He was a very well-known physical therapist. And I was sitting there. It was close to lunchtime, and I was thinking to myself, I haven't really learned a ton today. So I was getting to that point where I was feeling like what I was learning in the clinic from my mentorship, from my experience, from me learning and looking at the evidence, I was really getting a lot out of that. And I was thinking to myself, I can do this. Like, there's no reason why I can't be the one up on stage there and do it. As I mentioned in the podcast when you and I were talking, I was bullied in high school. I was told by a teacher I would never be a physical therapist. I didn't have what it took to make it. And I'd always had this feeling of, being too humble and not aggressive enough to be able to get out there and do that. And there's nobody in my family who owns a business. There's not a big business background. We're from Northern Maine. We work hard. My dad always said, keep your nose clean, work hard, and everything will fall into place. But as I was at this course, I thought to myself, I can do this. So I finished up the course. I went back and I just started writing some notes down and started putting it on paper. And then I started using some of my connections, some of the physicians that I was working with, and said, how willing would you be to come to my course and talk about the intricacies of a reverse total shoulder and how that surgery is? What are some of the contraindications afterwards? And what should we be careful? And they just jumped on that like white on rice. It was incredible. And no matter who I asked, they never refused, and they all came and helped me out. I did a majority of the lectures. And you're looking at the studio here. You're looking at the secretary, the administrator, the video editor, and I'm not very good with that stuff. But I do like to put a patient in front of me and take them from top to bottom. And then in some of my live classes, I was bringing in live patients with actual issues. And patients are always gracious enough to say, yeah, number one, you're helping me out. You're going to put 25 to 30 sets of eyeballs on me to give suggestions on how I could get better. And I want to help other people understand this, from the real thing. And that's what people really like, is they like to see patients with actual issues. And that's not always easy, especially like when I'm YouTubing this. I may do an evaluation. Like last week, I had 2 great evaluations that were just not super usual. And here, if I jump off the train here, pull me back on, Scott, because I can get a little excited about this. But I had this young lady. She came in. She was 16 years old, and I'm not going to give the diagnosis because I'm probably going to do a podcast about this one. She comes in and she's been having pain for 1.5 years, shoulder and neck pain, and she'd been seeing another provider for 1 year with no improvement. Within a minute, just by asking her a series of questions, I had her diagnosed. And she does not belong in physical therapy. She does not belong in chiropractic care. She does not belong in any orthopedic realm. And so we totally pivoted with this patient. She's not going to come back to see me because she doesn't need to. She needs to see a different specialist. And we were able to do that within a minute. And I know there are a lot of people out there that can take an hour to evaluate something like this and then still go ahead and do treatment on something that is not properly evaluated. So that's where and another situation was I was at a physical and I had a medical student come in and like I was when I was young, I was green, I was learning. She did my reflex. She was reflex testing me on the left side, got a great reflex for L4. And then she went to the right side and she struck me 9 or 10 times. And she couldn't get a reflex, and she stood up and she says, I think you have a herniated disc in your back. And here I have, 25 years of experience at the time. And I said, why don't you try hitting it right over here? And she struck it. She got a great reflex. And I said, that can really misguide you. And that's where I started to really feel like, we could help medical providers, not only physical therapists, but occupational therapists, chiropractors, PAs, NPs, in regards to performing a better evaluation. Because the number one reason people don't get better is because they misdiagnose the patient.
Absolutely.
And the second reason people don't get better is because you treated the wrong problem. And so I don't get heavy into treatment, although that's what I like to do. The evaluation part, I think, is super, super important. And if you can get that and you can target your evaluation a little bit better, then that's icing on the cake. Your treatment outcomes are going to be so much better and so much more efficient. And so that's kind of how and so I keep learning. I learn every day. I think that it's important that you still open up a book, I say open up a book. I still open books, but get reliable information from reliable people who have a lot of experience, and make it a team.
Yeah, no, I love, you're such a likable guy, and that I love that there's no hesitation to reach out to these. I mean, a lot of people might be very intimidated to reach out to a neurosurgeon, to, they're not going to want to do this for me. They're not going to want to be on my show. They're not going to want to, and look, they respect you. You have a good relationship with these people. And like you said, almost universally, they're willing to jump in and assist you, which is fantastic. So sometimes I think you just have to put yourself out there and be willing to ask the question. And I like the fact you were just sitting at that course thinking, you know what, like, this is fine, but I think I could do something even better. And you had the courage to do that, especially where you talked about how shy you were as a student in high school, and you kind of, sat back and kind of let things happen. I mean, you've really taken charge of your physical therapy career, and things have blossomed because of it. But Paul, how about the business side of things? Like you said, you really didn't have any business background. Like I was going to ask you kind of jokingly, like, Paul, how many people do you have on your staff? Do you have a videographer? Do you have a web designer? Do you have a technical team? Do you have, but I mean, you built your own website. Like, all these things you just figured out how to do. So, I mean, are you going to tell me, like, you grow cotton to have textiles, and you design and sew your own clothes, and you churn butter every morning as well? I mean, is there any limit to what you're willing to do?
It's funny you say that, Scott. So,
as
a matter of fact, I also own a tree farm, and it's a family business, and we all work on it together, and it's a great time. And to be honest with you, it's about 4 or 5 acres of trees, and we harvest every spring, and they're for transplant. And it's a family affair. My son drives a skid steer. My daughter lines them up. She cuts the root. My wife preps the baskets and burlap, and I do the wrapping. And people come pick up their trees, and they're super happy. It's like going to the ice cream stand and getting an ice cream. It's like, whoa, I got this tree I'm going to plant, and I'm going to watch it grow the rest of my life. But I do that.
I was dead on, apparently.
No. That's just a very small fraction of what I do. And so but the interesting thing about it is that it's pretty laborious, and we work hard, but it cleans my head out. I need that because I have so many different connections. So not only are we doing like live courses, but we just developed an online blood flow restriction training course, a non-biased course. It's like a 9 to 10 hour course. It's all moduled out and very clean and crisp, and a great course that took some time to put together with a colleague of mine. And
yeah, that's a very hot topic in clinical practice these days.
Oh, it is. And so it's made me very busy to have my hand in all of these things. And so, but I absolutely love it because it's all stuff that I enjoy. And, as a physical therapist, as you know, the return on investment is not grand financially. Okay. You might pay $150,000 to $200,000 to go to school. You have $150,000 worth of debt, and you come out making $75,000 a year. That's hard to pay off. It's hard to buy a house with that and buy a new car and, keep yourself going. So I don't know too many physical therapists who don't have a side gig of some sort, or, a side hustle. And it's something I've always had. I've always had 2 or 3 jobs, and it's just been in my nature. That's how I was kind of brought up. And unfortunately, I'm not great at all of them. And so one of the things I've decided in 2025, moving forward in the next several months, is I'm going to start making some decisions on what I say yes to and what I say no to. And, it's hard to balance everything out and keep everything on task, especially if you're not technically advanced, and you can't keep track of this stuff very well. So I still have everything written out and lots of notes, and it becomes overwhelming after a while, and it can be a little fatiguing. And I never hang my head. And I've always been that type of person where, you push hard, you sleep when you're dead type of thing, but it's kind of catching up with me. I'm getting a little older, and so I'm going to be making some big decisions, and I'm going to be saying no to some people, and I'm going to be taking care of Paul a little bit better. And I want to refine some of my products. I want to make my website better. I want to do better YouTube videos. I want to do more coaching. That has been really enjoyable to me, the one-on-one coaching where, I've coached people all around the world, basically, France, Italy, Scotland, and all over the US, from PTs to doctors, to medical students. And that's been one of those, things that I really want to build up because I so enjoy it.
No, that's great. Give me a sense of Ortho Eval Pal's reach these days. I mean, you've been in business for, what did we say, 2014, I think it started.
Yeah.
But how many folks are you dealing with or using your products or listening to you on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I was looking at it. I'm getting something like 20,000 hours of watch time on YouTube a month. Wow. And we're at about 127,000 subscribers on YouTube. I podcast every Tuesday, and I think I've missed maybe 2 Tuesdays in 354 episodes. And so that has kind of kept me on track. I get a lot of great feedback from folks, and they give me some great ideas on how to do other podcasts and other topics. And so the content, there's tons and tons of content. And so, like I said earlier, I'm reaching people all around the world with coaching. And I am really getting close to wanting to do some sort of online consulting with patients. I'm going to have to meet with some more connections and make sure that I'm doing it correctly and get the legal side of things taken care of. I just want to make sure we're good with that. But on a daily basis, probably 4 or 5 times a day, I get patients. I'm from India. I don't have any medical access. I have this issue. I just need some guidance. I don't need you to treat me. I just need to know, what direction should I go in? Or
how do people discover you? Is it through the Ortho Eval Pal that they reach
out
to you?
Through Ortho Eval Pal, through YouTube. YouTube has been a great generator of getting people to me. And so I'm getting a lot of folks like that where I know I can help in a different way. And so that it's kind of one of those things where I can give a broad topic on a podcast, but doing the one-on-one is really rewarding, and patients, really enjoy it. I've done it with a couple folks, and they're like, the greatest thing is to hearing the responses from people. Really, it's not about the money that I'm making, because really I've not made a tremendous amount of money. It's a nice passive income on the side, and I think we can really build it up to be something more than that. But
I was going to ask you about that. I was wondering if you had, if this was a philanthropic organization, or maybe you had a rich benefactor from Maine, like Stephen King, perhaps, is backing Ortho Eval Pal. Is there anything like that, Paul? Because the great thing about this is almost all of your offerings are completely free. So, yes. Certainly the podcast and many things. So, obviously, this is wonderful, because what is the one thing, especially new grads, don't have, right, is money. But I think once people get a sense of the quality of your offerings, you're going to be a regular on their computer, on their phones, and that's really what's happened to get to the number of subscribers, et cetera, that you have. So, kudos to you as far as that. And I'm obviously joking about Stephen King, but no, it's admirable, because this was not done to. You could have monetized this in a very different way earlier, but I don't think when you set out to do this, that was even on your radar, or that'd be my guess, just right. Knowing you and knowing, your work ethic, et cetera.
So I think one of the things to think about is you have a family, first of all. They come first, and I met my wife when I was in college. We didn't get together till we started working together up here in northern Maine, but we went to school together for 4 years. And to give you a great example of the imposter syndrome, I always thought to myself, she's beautiful. She's so smart. She's like, there's no way in this world will this girl ever say yes to me. And so, she was with somebody in college, and then she graduated, and then she was single. We were working in the same department together. And I said, you know what? Enough of this. I'm putting my foot forward, and I'm going to ask. And I asked, and she said yes, and we've been together. It's going to be 29 years here, and it's been absolutely awesome. And we have two wonderful children, and my daughter became a physical therapist, my son a financial advisor, and he helps us with our physical therapy finances, and which is really helpful.
Hey, that's a great combination.
It's been a great career. And I could have done more. And I always thought to myself early on, like as I was really getting to be what I thought was good at what I did, which, it takes about 10 years for people to really feel comfortable to say that they can evaluate and treat somebody with 100% confidence that they're going to be doing the right thing. Sure. And I always thought to myself, how nice would it be if I lived in a place like Boston or LA or something like that, where I could see a different clientele of people. I'm here in northern Maine, super, super remote, right on the Canadian border. But once, and don't get me wrong, I love all the patients that I treat and the people in the community up here. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's, I've gone to work every day excited about going to work. Never, ever have I had a day where I felt like I was going to work. And so I've enjoyed that. But once the internet came around and, YouTube started, I remember a doctor asking me, Paul, can you send me a video of this particular patient you're talking about? It's very unusual. And I'm like, I can't email that. Like, there's no email out there that's going to take that many megabytes or whatever it is. And so I thought, why don't I make a small YouTube channel. I'll put it on that, then I'll put it private, and then I'll just send them the link and they can take a look at it. And so that's what I did. I started with one little video and then another one. And then I get this phone call from a medical student from down in Memphis. And she's like, are you the Paul Marquis that used to have kids, Michael and Gabrielle, who took piano lessons, and all this? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I'm Michelle. I used to take piano lessons with them, and I'm in medical school right now, and we're watching your Hoffman's signed videos. And, I just wanted to say thank you because we never could see the real thing. And now we get to see the real thing. And it really just took that. And I was like, okay, we're going to start putting some more stuff up like this. And since then, it's organically grown. I haven't put out any ads to make it any bigger or better. But, I think if I had a team of social media marketing specialists, I think we could really blow this out of the water. But I still have this job that I'm very passionate about. I work 40, 45 hours a week at. I help triage a lot of difficult cases and people. And I really enjoy doing that. And I'm super loyal to my boss, who has given me the opportunity to do whatever I wanted. He said, if you want to do your own courses, go ahead. You want to start a YouTube channel, go ahead. He never said, this is going to take a lot of your time and it's going to take from you as a practitioner. And in essence, it's actually built the county physical therapy practice because people see me online now on YouTube, and they'll be looking up, anterior cervical disc fusion or, radiculopathy or whatever, and it pops up. They see me doing an interview with a neurosurgeon. They become interested. Then they want to come to physical therapy. They ask for me personally. We evaluate them. They become a surgical candidate. They then become a physical therapy patient, and it just kind of comes around, and that's been really fun to see that whole process.
Yeah, no doubt. And you're right about the internet being just such a, the proliferation of the internet. Not the internet's obviously been around for a long time, but because, for folks who are listening, like Paul's from the county in Maine, this is very rural. Now, this is my favorite county story. Now, look, I'm not, take this in the right spirit, because these are some of the nicest people in the world, and I'm not kidding you. So I'd always go up there for site visits. Now, granted, this is just dating me. This is like 30 years ago. This is my first experience. So I go up there, and I'm staying it's probably about 6 hours from southern Maine, 5 hours, whatever, give or take, depending on where you are in the county. And I was staying at Keddy's Motor Lodge. And I pull in, it's like around midnight. I'm getting up there, and there's like 4 cars. It's a pretty big place. There's like 4 cars. There's like 10 Orita crisper French fry trucks. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of potatoes harvested up there. So I check in, and I remember I was getting a text from my wife, like, where are you? Like, why aren't you there? Like, she was worried about me up there because I think it might have even been winter. It can be rough up there. Anyway, so I check in, and they said, would you like the deluxe room or the standard room? And I said, well, what's the difference? And they said, The deluxe room is $10 more, but it has a remote control for the TV. I was like, what?
You know
And I'm
your
like,
Northern
well,
Maine when. Yeah.
I'm like, deluxe. but that was 30 years ago. But my point is, it's kind of throwback kind of place. And you are seeing patients, you're seeing patients from all over. And like you said, you've got people driving down from Canada. You've got people, so, I mean, it's a big deal. And they, that the distance as well creates, I think, a lot of pressure to make sure those sessions are absolutely as productive as possible, because a lot of those folks, you can't do that 3 times a week. You can't do whatever, and they need to rely on your skills, because there's not 20 different clinics with 20 different subspecialties, and so I think you become a real generalist very quickly that way. And I think that's probably really helped your growth and development, and in terms of embracing the diversity of what you guys see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and as you do it, more and more, you learn that the resources were very limited back then, and so it was whatever books you could put your hands on, and that was it. And so now it's so much easier to get out there and get some information, especially on social media. But what I should always, warn you about, especially if you're a student, a PT student, PT assistant student, or a new grad, is be careful what you get on social media. I will watch other people's social media information, and a lot of it can be way off track. So you just want to make sure that the people who are giving the information are knowledgeable. They've got some research to back it up.
So, Paul, what advice would you have for folks who we talked about imposter syndrome, we talked about maybe not feeling like enough at some point, but I don't know, what do you see as maybe the barriers or the opportunities for students these days? I mean, you mentioned how one of your physicians was like, hey, could you put something online? And you looked at the YouTube channel. I mean, there are going to be things, especially with AI, right, as another piece, but there are so many opportunities that we can't even, envision today. But how as a new grad or just a therapist who's looking for something different, what would you recommend? How can you be aware or know what opportunities to pursue? Or I don't know, it's very confusing, and people get overwhelmed, and sometimes they just don't act because it's not a clear direction.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned AI, because AI is really been an anchor that is still in the bottom of the lake while I'm trying to move my boat forward. As I move forward, I have stuck with doing all of my podcasting, my videos organically. So I'm not throwing any AI into that. I don't like how it's presented. I don't like that there are people who are not even therapists doing therapy AI type of, social media things. And just, I don't like that. But nonetheless, I think that if you have a question, you should try to answer that question. If you have a struggle, you should try to figure out, what to do. So if one day somebody turned off your water and said, you can't have any food, what do? You become desperate and you become innovative. And therefore, you have to figure out, how am I going to feed myself and how am I going to get water? Okay, is there a river close by? Is there a stream? Can I make a fire? Can I sterilize my water? And then you have to become creative on how to survive. And I think at some point, that's what has to happen to people. I think we have too much access in our hands. But I think the number one thing you should think about is, do you have a struggle? Is there something that is bothering you? Is there a struggle that your patients have or the people around you have? And is there some way to fix that? Is there some way to help make that struggle a little less aggressive? And that's kind of what I was seeing, is that people were learning a lot in school, but they weren't seeing a lot of practical situations, or they weren't having good mentorship to guide them. Right. And so therefore you can easily go down the wrong rabbit hole. And so I think making sure that you have good mentorship and asking those questions. If you're going to be going on a clinical, you want to ask that question, am I going to be mentored? If you're going to get a new job, am I going to be mentored? Can I ask questions? And you have to be willing to accept constructive criticism, number one. As a new grad, as a student, if a therapist or your CI says, I really think you need to do this or you need to do that, or you should listen to it. You should be not reactive, but you should think and feel before you react. And and that will get you, where you need to be. But I think that, just working hard, you have to work extra. It's just not going to fall in your lap. I think that if I'd have just done physical therapy, just treated patients, not pushed myself a little bit more, or not helped my patients get the answers that they needed, I think I wouldn't be here on this podcast today, and I wouldn't be doing what I do, with YouTube and online coaching, and Ortho Eval Pal wouldn't exist. You have to put your best foot forward, and you have to work. You have to work hard, and by doing that, you'll learn from your mistakes. We've all made mistakes, and the one thing you need to do is learn from it and move forward.
No, I totally agree. And I think I love hearing too, because a lot of people feel like, look, I'm in debt. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then I'd say 75% of the people that I've had on the show so far are people who really had no money, had debt, and just started a passion project. And in many cases, it turned into something that they ran with. And in other cases, it didn't. And they pivoted, and now they're doing something different. And the cool thing that I see, Paul, a lot, and I see this totally in your case, is that you've built up this whole cadre of items that you do, whether it's coaching, whether it's podcasts, whether it's conducting medical education seminars and all these things. And you've done so many things. And now you're in a position where you can really choose what you do and then double down in any direction you want to go. Folks, think how exciting that is. Like you're getting to chart your own course moving forward because of this skill set and network that you've built and that people have appreciated over time. And that's, I don't know, at the end of the day, it seems like flexibility and freedom of choice may be two of the most important things to living a fulfilling life. And so it's your life work at one level, at least your work over the last 3 decades, that have put you in this situation, which I think makes your future tremendously exciting. And I think the same thing it's hard to see that when you're just coming out of school, or you're just looking to make a change or go into an entrepreneurial activity for the first time. But Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time. But I hear story after story of people who just have the work ethic and the willingness to try. And you know what? We're pretty good as physical therapists. And Paul, I'm also convinced that you'd be really good at Survivor, with the river example and the water, and I would be the type that was just like cowering in the corner, like thinking like, is there any chance I can get delivery? So I don't want to go there, but
no.
But anyways, Paul, I usually end with this question about, it's from this podcast, how I built this, like what percentage of your success is luck and hard work. I'm not even asking you that question because, you'll be humble and you'll say, oh, I was super lucky. I was this and that. No, Paul, lucky to find your wife, have a supportive spouse. Okay, maybe. But anything else, you put your nose to the grindstone. You weren't willing to take no. You dealt with rejection early in some cases, or you can't do this, you can't do that. You used it as fuel. And now you've got this, massive offering that's helped thousands of therapists improve the quality of patient care. And I bet those few hours you do sleep at night, I bet you sleep pretty well, knowing the contributions you've made to this profession. And I know, I still can't get over the tree farm, Paul. I got to process this later today. Yeah. I can't get over that.
I'll send you an email with a list of things that we do on the side. Yeah.
But anyways, Paul, I have a ton of respect for what you've done, and I really want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your story. And I really want to push people to visit your site, to look at your offerings. This is how Paul comes across in his videos and podcasts as well. It's practical information. It's experience-based. And there's no question you will refine your orthopedic skills by engaging in those services. So, Paul, thanks again. I truly appreciate it.
Well, Scott, I really thank you for the kind words, and and just for all the folks who are out there listening. Scott has made this tremendous contribution to everybody's ability to get into physical therapy, pass their boards, and become more confident as physical therapists. Because having the confidence while you're treating patients is super important, and Scott's been a major contributor to that. And Scott, I thank you for that. I wish you'd have been a little older than me and would have brought score builders to me before I took my board exams. But we passed, and life would have been a lot easier having had score builders. But I hear your name. I hear score builders all the time. My daughter utilized the system, and it was extremely helpful. And it's just wonderful what you've done. Wonderful what you're doing with this podcast. I think it's great that we can teach folks, and I was going to say young people out there who are, becoming therapists or becoming doctors or becoming nurse practitioners. It doesn't really matter. You can be older and jump into a new profession or a side hustle.
Sure.
You just have to be passionate about it. And as long as you enjoy it and you don't feel like it's a lot of extra work, then it's perfectly fine. And go ahead and do it and dabble and try it out, get your feet wet and follow what Scott did, follow his model. It was absolutely great. His story's great. And if you listen to him on my podcast, you'll get Scott's full story. And Scott, thank you for all of your contributions.
You're welcome, Paul. Appreciate you joining us. And thanks for all the listeners. We'll be back next month with another exciting podcast. Have a great day.
And there you have it, another dose of PT-preneurial inspiration to fuel your journey. Check out more inspiring stories from PTs and PTAs out there making waves by listening and subscribing to our podcasts on your favorite streaming platforms. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast. Thanks for listening.